Hello, my name's Colin Crithers, and I'm a student reporter and broadcaster at the University of Iowa. As a journalist, my job is to tell stories, while also balancing everything else going on in my life as a student. But no one tells our stories. So, my goal is to tell the stories of the student journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers all across the country. Let's walk the student beat. Welcome in. Today we're walking the student beat with Sam Federman of Syracuse. Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Colin?
I'm great. Thanks for joining me here on this episode. So, if you don't mind, just starting off with an introduction to yourself, a little bit of your background, and the journalistic outlets you work with.
So my journalistic career so far is probably a little bit different than what most of the people you're getting on the student beat have to say. I don't do extensive work with the student newspaper or student radio station. I write for Mid-Major Madness covering college basketball in the Northeast, Noon's Magician to cover Syracuse basketball, and I also do some stuff for Daily Dose of Hoops, for Basket Under Review, and for my own podcast, Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers. So most of my work is done by myself or for one of those outlets, or by myself for one of those outlets, and not in a newsroom or in a radio station. But I think that I've had those experiences. I have done stuff for the Daily Orange at Syracuse. My freshman year, I wrote the volleyball beat. I've pitched some other stories to them as well. But I think the important thing is I'm still trying to go out there and making myself, finding a way for myself to get active and get up shots as much as possible, if one may, with how many college basketball games that I cover and how often I'm getting out and writing, how often I'm trying to tell a different story. I cover mid-major basketball, specifically the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. We just recently, last month, dropped the fourth annual MAAC season preview. This is the book version that my mom makes for me every year. It was 66 pages. It was 76 pages this year, 31,166 words of preview content for the conference. Plenty of plenty of different previews for each team. Um, Interviews with every coach, and then I went to 106 college basketball games last season, and I'm well on my way to 100 this year.
Hell yeah. I say this is prime season for you right now with college basketball starting up.
Yeah, and I'm surprised you were able to get me on.
I am too. I was like, I'm gonna shoot my shot with this DM, see what happens. And I'm shocked that we were able to fit this in. So I appreciate it again. I've seen the book, obviously, you just referenced to, so people understand how depth it is. Can you just like bring up maybe one of your favorite like details of it?
So, um, every coach call that I do for this, it can go from like 17, 18 minutes to some of these coaches, they talk forever. And these calls can be 45 minutes long. And I have to transcribe the whole thing. Obviously, I'll use a transcriber for that because I'm not listening back to 45 minutes and transcribing every second of it. Thank God for the transcription apps. But the last couple of years, I have done the graphics myself. I actually have the old versions right here. Um, you have what the original graphics looked like were this. It was very NBA Jam, very, very basic.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Then last year, I went and did a boardwalk theme. Um, that changed things a little. I actually liked the theme, but I didn't like the graphics. So this year, Mid Major Madness has had somebody named Hannah Butler who does graphics work for Mid Major Madness, and I asked her to help with the graphics, take something off my plate, and she did a tremendous job with the graphics for this year. It was a little bit difficult considering it wasn't me doing it, so she didn't have like exactly the same vision I did. So we had to talk a lot through that, especially the last day before it released. But it just looks so much more readable, so much better than last year in terms of just how it folds through. And obviously, most people are not reading it as a book. I think I'm the only one in the world, aside from maybe my grandparents, who have a physical copy of this. But if you see the PDF, it's just so much better than it has been in past years.
And so yeah, I like that boardwalk theme as well, but that looks pretty clean right there.
Yeah, so much cleaner this year. I mean, here's the thing. I'm terrible at Photoshop. I am awful, awful, awful at Photoshop. I am a writer through and through. I can write, I can talk on air, I can do all that stuff. I cannot use Photoshop. This looks awful.
Dude, we do this assignment and I everyone does it. They go through the journalism program where they have to make like these book covers. And I did mine last year and it did not go very well. Like I can do some in Photoshop. You'll see some graphics like on our shows that I've made, but it ain't pretty. It ain't pretty. I pretend like I know what I'm doing sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, when I do my podcast, I have a friend, CJ, who does all the graphics for me because I can't do it. And
Valid.
there aren't that many graphics. It's like very simple stuff that like I just am terrible at.
Fair, fair. But hey, that's why we stick with what we got, what we're good at.
Yeah, you gotta know your role.
Exactly. You gotta have some role players. You can't just be the star of every team.
Exactly. You gotta know your role.
Well, I
You,
want to
you,
ask.
you've got you gotta fill your roster with the right types of people, and that's I mean if that's something that works in journalism and in life. You have to know. I mean, obviously, you can have as many friends as you want, but when it comes to those friends, you have to know like what every single one of them is good at and how you can make them better and how they can make you better. And it's the same in journalism. All of your confidants, the people that you're close with in journalism, some of them will make you better in some ways, and you'll make them better in other ways.
Absolutely. I love that because, like, I think from my perspective too, it's kind of like I played sports growing up, and obviously I don't anymore. I'm doing the journalism side of it, but I
That's
kind
most
of
of us.
treated the. Sorry.
That's most of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think at least. And I know that like I almost treat it like sports. Like I wonder like growing up, like what am I doing this for if I'm not gonna go play college, professional, whatever. But I think I still learn from a lot of my stuff of like from the basketball perspective, I know how I can help my team here with DITV and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask too, because we'll get into more of the stuff that you've done, but at one point you had to realize this is something that you wanted to do. Journalism, in any sense, was a career for you. So when did you realize that this is something you wanted to go into?
I don't know. I think I was 9, probably before that. I kept playing sports for a long time after that. But I knew that I wanted to talk about sports because every single day at lunch in elementary school, I would like it was basically like I would host a trivia game with my friends because I just knew so much about sports, and none of them knew anything. I mean, they liked sports, but they just didn't. And it was basically a sports talk show trivia time every day at lunch, and then I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I could make talking about sports into my job, into my life? And that was kind of how I knew that journalism was the way to go. I originally thought that it was going to be broadcasting, play-by-play. I think most of us kind of start there. And I did a lot of that in middle school. I started the program at my middle school. I'm pretty sure I also ended the program at my middle school, but I have never seen another video from my middle school where they're calling a game. Um, we had a lot of great moments. We had a lot of moments where I was very much a middle schooler at the time. Then I went to high school. Didn't get off the ground running the way that I wanted to. Wasn't able to call games really until my junior year because of COVID and just kind of like we had to establish trust between me and the athletic department there. I think probably playing on the hockey team helped establish a little bit of trust between me and the athletic department and kind of let them know, yeah, hey, like I'm serious about this. I'm serious about making this work. And by my junior year, I started calling some of the basketball games, boys and girls at my high school. By the time my junior year came along, I also wanted to start a sports section at the student paper at my high school, and there was basically nothing there, and they said no, we don't have a sports section and we're not starting one. So baseball season's winding down. It's around October, that had occupied me almost entirely for like 5 months because the Red Sox were good. But once baseball season ended, I was thinking, all right, what am I going to do with my time now that I'm now that I can't do a sports section for the student paper, and obviously I'm playing hockey, but that's not taking up every day of every minute. So what am I going to do? And I just said, hey, why don't I just apply for credentials to local college basketball games and start writing about local college basketball? And that's really how it started for college basketball. I've always loved college basketball. It has always been probably the sport that I like most versus like the average person. Like I grew up on Patriots football and Red Sox baseball. So like I'm familiar with a lot of winning on those sides, but college basketball is, and obviously I grew up with UConn basketball, so it's not like I didn't grow up with winning there either. So um, I think that college basketball is kind of the sport for me that um, I always loved. It's just that I had a couple years where I was a little bit out of it, got back into it really hard my junior year of high school, and probably a little more my sophomore year of high school too. Like towards the end, I was watching it every single night for hours and hours, like I do now. And then my junior year of high school, I started going to games. I went to 23 games that year, 22 games, sorry. And then I didn't even have my driver's license yet, and I got to 22 different games. Then I did a little bit more writing, did some off-season stuff. Then I didn't really know exactly what I was doing that year, but I realized by the middle of the year that, hey, I need to do the MAAC. That's the thing that I need to do. Obviously, the mid-majors right here. Obviously, Fordham, Hofstra, Wagner, like those schools I got to do. But the MAAC is my thing because there's Iona, there's Hofstra, there's Quinnipiac, there's Manhattan, all those schools near me, Marist. And so in 2023, I focused heavily on the MAAC and obviously on the other local schools too. I did my first MAAC season preview, which was 12,000 words. It released on, I believe, October 13th, 2022, my senior year of high school. And from there, I did 53 college basketball games that year, my senior year of high school. That included my first ever trip to the Final Four in Houston. So that was really exciting. And then by the time I got to college, I was so deeply ingrained in this world of college basketball media that like I had the podcast, which was which I was doing, but when I was in high school, it was like, oh, you do 10 episodes a year. I think we did 60 episodes. My freshman year of college, we did 88 episodes in season 5, which was from the national championship 2024 to the national championship 2025. And we're already at 51 from the national championship 2025 to the national championship 2026. So brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers, if you need a new college basketball podcast in your feed, we're going to have another one coming out soon. But I did 89 games my freshman year of college. And I think part of the reason why I never got any further with the Daily Orange than one semester of beat writing is because of how deeply ingrained I was within college basketball. And they they were probably right to not trust that I'd be able to put as much attention behind the DO as I probably should have if I were to be if I were to work in house there. And I think that it also kind of allowed me to go even further into this college basketball stuff and dive even deeper. And I did 106 games last year, breaking the 100 mark. And at my 100th game, the commissioner of the MAAC, it was at the MAAC tournament, came up to me and he gave me this commemorative basketball
That's
and
awesome.
a new MAAC hat because my old one was really broken down. And he gave me a little certificate as well. I don't know where that is right now. It's probably somewhere over there.
But yeah, no, that's amazing. Obviously, very impressive. And I was just curious because, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, you kind of have a different angle than most people on this show. You're our first repeat of a school. I've had someone on from Syracuse before, if you know Adam Avin.
Yeah.
I've had him on. But obviously, it's different angles. And I was curious.
Haven. Haven.
Oh my God, my bad, my bad. Thank you, thank you. I think I did that.
There are people here that would kill me if I didn't correct that.
Thank you. I cannot believe I said that wrong because I had to correct myself
Don't
as
worry,
well.
don't worry.
But
I won't tell him.
we'll keep it our public secret as I'm gonna post this, and I'm not cutting this out. But um, like most people stick with their college papers, TV, whatever. That's what I do. I know that. How do
I mean,
you,
I
I mean, how do you kind of like break away from that norm? Is it just trusting yourself?
I would have stayed with the paper. I think the DO kind of made that decision for me, where they didn't give like there's it's so competitive at Syracuse, and I think at another school, if I were say at in Iowa, no offense obviously to Iowa, we had Brad on our podcast to preview Iowa men's basketball this summer, and it was a good show. No offense to Iowa, no offense to most of the other schools, but I wouldn't have broken off from the student paper. I wouldn't have gone away from the student paper at most other schools because it's simply not as competitive, and I would have gotten myself to bigger beats faster um, because that's just how it is here. But at Syracuse, there's a deep application process for every in-house role. The sports editor and the other people in-house make the decision on who covers the beats. And I got one beat my first semester of my freshman year because they were short on guys, which is very rare. And it was just me and one other person on the volleyball beat my freshman year. And to be completely honest, I did not do as good of a job as I probably could have on it. I think I'm still proud of the work that I did for the most part, but I was doing it while I was writing the second MAAC season preview. I was doing it while I was still focused heavily on college basketball, and I think that the people at the DO kind of understood that it would probably be difficult for me to balance both. They went in another direction. They have there's a couple kids there that they hired that were great decisions. So I'm not going to tell them that they should have hired me instead. It would have been really fun to write for the DO, I think, and to go that path. But once I didn't get that, I knew that I had to just go all in on college basketball for that year, and then I applied again, didn't get another thing, and again, I hold nothing against any of the people at the DO. Some of those people are still people I'm close with that I text multiple times a week or however many times a day. Um, they're good people, but it just wasn't the path that was meant for me. I think that that was something that was best for probably both of us, and I found a path that has allowed me to grow in my own way.
Yeah, I say like Syracuse is probably when I think of competitiveness, especially in like journalism schools, journalism in general, I think Syracuse. And I don't think that's hard on any other school. It's just again, there's so many more people competing for like one spot, two spots, so on and so forth. But we brought up a few times mid-major madness as well, writing for them. So for those unfamiliar, kind of describe what that looks like and what you exactly do with them.
So Mid-Major Madness is an SB Nation site that covers mid-major basketball, and it's been a staple in the college basketball world for a long time. Very, very well known for the Twitter account that we've had multiple people run through the years. Nick Lawrenson did it for a while. He did a really good job. He's now on staff at LaSalle. So we now have a team of guys running it. I'm one of them now. But the website, we cover mid-major basketball from all angles, but it's really hard to find somebody that can cover certain leagues, certain places. Um, I'm based in the Northeast. I'm from Westchester County, New York. Originally from West Harrison. I so I covered the Northeast and specifically the MAAC. And when I go to a game in the MAAC, I will write about that game. If I write features on the MAAC, I write features on other Northeast teams. I write previews for the season for the other Northeast leagues. I write a lot of stuff on those other Northeast leagues. And I obviously cover the MAAC tournament. I cover the other conference tournaments when I can. And when I go to a game, I try and get something up that's more of a sidebar story than a gamer because the site because if I were to do a gamer for every game I went to, it wouldn't make sense on the website because we don't have gamers for anywhere else in the country. It would just be me. So sidebars make more sense. where I can focus on a bigger angle than just the game itself. Some maybe a trend that's happening with a team. Like I wrote about Riders losing streak last year after they lost to Penn. I wrote about I write about players maturing into bigger roles. I write about maybe if someone's struggling and what a team did to shut him down. That's something that I did with Maris and Amari Monroe. I'll do my MAAC notes, MAAC news and notes, my 5 things to watch, Northeast results you may have missed. So I kind of try and cover the MAAC in the Northeast from all different angles for Mid-Major Madness. We got a big team, but it's not as big as it should be. I wish we had a bigger team. Ian Sachs, the site manager, has done a great job giving me freedom and really sticks with me through a lot of stuff. Even though he gets really busy because he works in TV. Lance Hartzler, our editor, also does a great job. Uh, but again, doesn't always have the full time response. Doesn't always have the responsibility, the ability to do it as often as we would hope. So we don't get quite as much content as we would like. Riley Frayne, who like me travels around, goes to college basketball games in the Northeast. He's awesome. We've got a bunch of other guys as well on the team. Isaac Bourne he can do some of this stuff in the Southeast. He's from Arkansas. Oh, he's from Kentucky, but he goes to school in Arkansas, so he's all around there. Like we would love to be able to more deeply cover certain conferences, but with the budget restraints that we have, it's not a we don't have a very big budget, and we kind of just have to fly by the seat of our pants with most of the country. But when we're talking about the Northeast, we have me, we have Riley, we have Jake Copestick, we have Jacob Phillips, we have Connor Wilson on our team. Or I'm not sure if Connor's still doing any work with us, but we have a lot of guys that can cover the Northeast. So we have the entire Northeast on lock at Mid-Major Madness.
Shout out to the team. There's a lot of good stuff there. I will admit myself love following along the coverage with that. You mentioned a lot of different angles. Do you have a favorite one or like maybe story that you've kind of written about, talked about?
Um, I wrote about my least favorite press conference of the year in the MAAC season preview, which if you open to the first page, I got someone that really complimented me on the intro to the MAAC season preview. It starts with the hardest press conference I do every single year is the loser of the MAAC championship game. I don't have a favorite team in the MAAC, but I have a deep appreciation for every coach, player, athletics official, and person in the conference. To see any of them heartbroken always breaks my heart. And uh, it was a, it was kind of 400 something words on the losing press conference, and then I talked about like what makes the MAAC special in general. Um, so we got to that, and I will say, if my least favorite press conference is the losing MAAC championship, my favorite press conference is the winning MAAC championship press conference. And I was so proud of them. And the thing about the MAAC championship is you want to do the moment justice in a story because it is the biggest moment of my year. It I call all year I call the MAAC championship game the Super Bowl. Like it's a bit that I have on Twitter. And if you follow me on Twitter, you know how many bits I have. I have way too many bits. It's very hard to keep track of. If you ever want to know what a bit means, ask me because honestly, some of them I don't know. But we're still waiting on that first exact media timeout on the men's side this year for a game that I go to. Hopefully, we get it tonight and I own a Fordham. But the thing is, when I write that championship game story, I only have a couple hours. Me, honestly, less than that to think of an angle because I can't just do a game recap. It has to be bigger than that and tie the whole season together using the press conferences that we've had, the game that we had. So my favorite story from last season, I had a lot of good ones. I think my Dave Klatsky story was really fun. The Bud Clark story was really fun. The Justice Schoch story got me an A in a class. But the story that I had the most fun with and that I'm the most proud of from last year, and also one more after this I'll get into, was the Donnie Lind MAC champion story that I wrote from that upper box at Boardwalk Hall that I go to after the championship game is over to write it. And as the game was winding down, So Dan Engelstad used to be the head coach at Mount St. Mary's. He's now an assistant coach at Syracuse. As the game was winding down, I texted him and said, "Hey, could I call you and get some quotes right after this game?" And he's like, "I'm going to go to bed." So I called him like in the final minutes of the game just to ask him some questions. So I got quotes from him because it was a lot of his players that stayed on. He was so proud of them, and I wanted to get his words on just the culture of Mount St. Mary's as a school. I found the athletic director on the celebrating on the court. I interviewed him for like 2 minutes, got some of his quotes, and then obviously the press conference with the players, the coaches, and I put together this piece, 4 parts on what made the Mount special this year. It was retention. There was frustration, which is kind of the way that they play. It's very Shaka Smart VCU, pressure, ball pressure, switch everything type stuff. Culture, which is again Shaka Smart VCU that comes through there, and then finish, the ability to kind of finish the MAC tournament without guys who were with guys who were hurt. Melo Pacheco was their best shooter. Terrell Ard was one of their top scorers. They both missed the entire MAC tournament. Dallas Hobbs was hobbling throughout the entire MAC tournament. They won anyway. That story was really fun because I had to whip it up really quickly. Uh, and I think I did an awesome job on that, not to pat my own back. And then a couple weeks later at the Final Four, if you know anything about the MAC and my coverage, Iona was the team that I first covered like super deeply because it's the closest to me. And when I was a freshman college basketball writer, so when I was a junior in high school, Iona had a freshman, and his name was Walter Clayton Jr. Um, and I loved covering Walter at Iona. He was always great. Just his voice is fun. Like he's a fun guy to talk to. Fun press conference. So I covered him for 2 years at Iona. He was MAC Player of the Year, and he goes to the Final Four, and I'm like, I know my angle. Like this story was built for me. So I talked to Parker Weiss, who was on that team at Iona. I talked to Steve Masiello, who was one of the assistant coaches for Iona that year. Now he's an assistant at St. John's. And when I got to the Final Four on Friday, um, I had a question for Todd Golden. I had a bunch of questions for Walter Clayton, and I put together a story on Walt that I had so much fun writing about like how he evolved from a freshman, the young buck of that Iona team that won the MAC regular season title and lost in the quarterfinals of the MAC tournament to Ryder because, in large part, because Walter missed a free throw. He never misses free throws now. He shot 96% from the line the next year. He was #1 in the country. Um, it was a hold the press moment when he missed one at Fairfield, and I remember it. But I loved that story. That was really fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. Is that the one that kind of blew up a little bit too? I think that one got.
Yeah, that one definitely got I think what about 150 likes on Twitter. The Dave Klasky one I think got like 300 likes on Twitter. That was a profile of the NYU coach, who's now an assistant at Florida. It's a pretty big jump.
Just a
Uh,
little.
but I was like, nobody's told this guy's story. He's a really, really sharp coach. He's young. And he's going to be a Division I head coach someday. Why can't I be the first one to tell his story? And so I was.
Hell yeah.
I talked to like 7. That was probably the biggest source story I did last year. I think I talked to 7 or 8 people for that one. Um, and it was like the Deshane Montgomery story I wrote my freshman year of college, where I talked to 7 or 8 people for that one as well.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going into some of those. And it's how like plenty of effort in all of these stories. I want not the sidebar completely, but I want to ask you for this season for the MAC. Do you have a favorite that could? I know it's early, 2, 3 games into the year, but do you have a favorite that could come out on top at the end of the season?
Look, I get asked this question all the time. This is like what most people want to know from me. Hey, who's going to win the MAC? Who's going to win the MAC? Brett Autry asked me this question. All of the all the people that I talk to about basketball want to know who's going to win the MAC.
I had to
And
throw it
like
in.
my preseason power rankings, because I don't do standings predictions, I do power rankings. I
Mhm.
had Siena at #1. So far, that looks like a pretty solid prediction. They were pretty solid power ranking. They're #1 in the MAC in Ken Palm right now. They're at 150, which is They were at 148, which was the highest the MAAC team had been in KenPom in a couple of years. They did lose to St. Bonaventure on the road, but it was a tough game. They looked pretty good for most of it. They lost Riley Mulvey in that game. Hopefully, Riley Mulvey is okay. I don't know the deal on that. I will be seeing Siena in person at the Albany Cup in MVP Arena on Friday, the 21st, against U Albany.
I kind of blanked on Riley Mulvey. That's a Iowa
Yeah, I
transfer.
forgot about that.
There it is.
Shout out Iowa. Shout out Fran.
Fran McCaffrey. Oh my, because that's where he used to
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah,
Honestly,
he
what
was,
was
he was at Siena. He was. His kids were ball boys at Siena, and now he is now full circle. I got to break the story of him becoming the head coach at UPenn.
yeah. No, I remember we had someone here that was out at the men's NCAA like national championships, and that was in Philadelphia. And at this time, seasons are like ending, like Iowa basketball's done. And they were coming back through the airport to come back to Iowa City. And we got a text like, I see Fran McCaffrey in the airport. And about 3 hours later, the news broke that he had officially like became the head coach at UPenn. And I was like, you were so close. That was kind of cool. But
No, yeah, I got that story because I'd heard that he'd been on campus at Penn, and I was like, oh, like I've got to figure this out now. Like I've got to I've got to I've got to try and confirm whether he's getting the job or not. And very fortunately, I was able to do that. My brother was a manager at UPenn, and I got to call him and tell him who his new head basketball coach was going to be.
that's awesome. So like you broke the news to him.
Yes, now he was only there for a couple more weeks. He graduated in May, but he still obviously watches all the Penn games because he's a Quaker. I come from a family of Quakers. Both my parents are UPenn grads. One of my grandparents is a UPenn grad, so that one meant a lot to me, breaking that story.
How do you go about trying to figure out that information? Like, for example, with that story, how do you go about asking around, seeing if it's confirmed that Fran McCaffrey is the head coach there?
Well, first of all, you have to be very careful with the words you choose.
Fair.
I never said that he was the new head coach or he was about to become. I said it was imminent that he would finalize a deal or whatever I said. Imminent, because that was the word that I'd heard. Um, and I think once you have that, that's about enough to go. But you've got to double confirm. You've got to also be okay like not breaking the story because if you can't find a double confirmation, like just let it go. Somebody's gonna get it. It's not the end of your world if you don't break the story. If you're, say, a student journalist, obviously, eventually you're going to be paid based on, hey, you've got to be able to get these scoops. But right now, you want to get the scoop. Fight for the scoop. Go for it. But don't jump the gun. Don't go out there and say something because if you only have one source or if the source isn't sure, because you only have your reputation once, and it's better to just build that network now and go if you have something. Go if you have double confirmation, absolutely, and it's from people you trust. But the most important thing is to protect your reputation and not put out information that is going to get you in trouble. Don't put out information that's going to get you an email from someone, is what I'll say. But obviously, the most important thing is to be accurate. And I would not have broken that story if I couldn't get double confirmation. In the moment, it really feels like it's you against the clock, it's you against the world. Um, but let's be completely honest here. You're all fighting for the same thing. It's not, especially if you're a student journalist. The difference between breaking the story and not breaking the story is not the end of the world. Um, and you should be confident enough in your scoop before you put it out there. If you're just scooping something for the first time or young with that, obviously, once you get to a point where you're getting more scoops, then you have more reliable sources, then that becomes different, and it does, and people will look to you to break these stories. But I'm not at that point right now where people are looking to me to break head coaching stories consistently. Um, I would like to get there. I would love to, but I also had an exam the next morning that I had to put off studying for because I was chasing that story.
Yeah, no, I know that that's a big thing for people to understand in journalism. So I appreciate you sharing that side of everything, how that all looks. And just because we brought it up earlier, I want to talk about it again real quick. Your own podcast, Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. If it isn't obvious from the name already, kind of talk about what you guys dive into with that and how that adds onto your coverage already.
Yeah, so I cover college basketball mostly just in the Northeast doing the mid-major stuff, but I watch every night hours and hours of college basketball when I'm not at games. Even when I'm at games, I'm following other games. And I think that a key part of my thing has always been the podcast for me. I've always been a podcast guy. I had my first podcast in 2018. I deleted all the pods. I then did another podcast in 2019 and into 2020, which was like a weekly thing. That was kind of how I really got into kind of the sports social media side of this as well, where I started to promote the pod places. I started to talk on Twitter a lot more around that time and try and get guests and all that stuff. Most of the guests were just my friends, but then I found another group of friends once COVID hit online on a website called Sportscaster that kind of helped me grow through that podcast and all that stuff. And that podcast went from once a week, and I did it a little more, and it was all sports. I would talk about all sports. Eventually, I wanted to talk about college basketball on a podcast, and I just came up with one night in the 2021 season. I just came up with the name Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers because we were going to be talking about brackets, bubbles, and bit stealers, and it just stuck. The next year, I met Jonathan Lidskin, who's been my co-host now for since season 2 of the show, since 2021-22. Um, and we did a couple episodes that year. We did a bunch of episodes my senior year of high school. But what Brackets, Bubbles, and Midsters is a podcast where we're not just talking about college basketball from the lens of what it means. We're not talking about college basketball the way that most people talk about college basketball, the way that you hear college basketball talked about on TV. Because obviously the big brands, the big programs, the blue bloods, all that matters, and we will talk about that. But we try and break down the game. We try and break down the game. We try and break down the numbers, because we are both people that believe in analytics. We are people that believe in numbers. We are people that believe in watching the game and understanding the game. We think that college basketball comes from a lot, the college basketball talk is driven by a lot of narratives instead of driven by what's actually going on the floor. And there are a couple podcasts that help us do it, that do a tremendous job of talking about analysis and breaking down games. But we try and break down games, we try and break down numbers at a really different level. And we also want to talk about the entire sport. Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers is very proud to try and talk about as many teams as we possibly can. Um, we do our mid-major Thursday shows during conference play, where we will proudly open the show talking about a game between Vermont and UMass Lowell, or a game between Oakland and Green Bay, or a game between UC Riverside and UC Irvine, just because those are good games that are happening that people need to know about, and we love talking about that. That's where you get brackets, bubbles, and bit series. When we talk about brackets, we're talking about brackets. We're not talking about the NCAA tournament all year long, but we're talking about the teams that are going to make up the NCAA tournament, even if it's the teams that no one's talking about throughout the year. We're talking about teams all year long that most people aren't talking about. We're talking about the teams that people do talk about in ways that most people don't talk about them. We are, I think we make a great team. I don't want to say that like we are the only podcast that does this. I think that a lot of podcasts now have started to do. I think people have started to do a better job of analyzing college basketball, kind of since I started, or maybe I've just found people that do it better. Like I listen to Three Man Weave every week, and I love that podcast because it's not just falling into the narratives that most people talk about in college basketball. And I think that you have to understand the narratives, but you have to make sure that the narratives are you have to fact check the narratives. You have to talk about the games for what you see on the floor and not for what other people want to hear. Um, and Brackets, Bubbles, and Bitch Stealers is all about what's happening on the floor. And also, if you're going to listen to Brackets, Bubbles, and Bitch Stealers, be prepared for a lot of bits. Again, we have a lot of bits. We try and keep it light. We don't want to just kind of read off a stat sheet. We don't want to. Um, we want to watch as many college basketball games as we can, and we want to give the best analysis possible. But we also want it to be entertaining to listen to, and we want to be funny. Sometimes we're not funny, sometimes we are, but we have a lot of bits and we have a lot of things that we talk about on the show. Um, and I think that the way that we cover college basketball on the podcast is different from the way most people cover college basketball because we put a deep understanding of every level of the game, from the highest of the high majors to the lowest of the low majors. Um, we try and get them shine.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep it fun because college basketball is fun. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's what
mean,
it's all
college
about.
basketball is to me the greatest sport on the planet because anything can happen on any given night. One of my favorite things that my co-host Jonathan says is that on any given night, if you want to find a good college basketball game, you can. Um, Sometimes that game has nothing to do with high major basketball, and you will see, but you can see a player that maybe in a couple of years will be playing high major basketball, or a coach that will be in a couple of years coaching high major basketball, or maybe you won't, and maybe you're just tuning into a game because it's close at the end. We do that. I do that all the time. I was watching Idaho San Diego the other night. Idaho's probably a solid team in the Big Sky. San Diego probably not very good in the WCC. But I watched the end of that game and San Diego won. I watched UC San Diego Fresno State at the same time. UC San Diego 3-0 in post Eric Olin era. Did not maybe saw that coming, but like they have basically a whole new team, and Clint Allard's done a really good job to start that season. They're probably going to be one of the better teams in the Big West. And the Big West is always a fun league that I don't watch enough of because I'm on the East Coast and I'm going to bed.
Big was it do some Big West after dark. We don't have Pac-12 after dark anymore. So
We're getting Pac-12 after dark back, even though the Pac-12, the new Pac-12,
it's
it
it's a
doesn't have the same vibe as the old Pac-12.
not no, it doesn't. It's just the Mountain West part
Texas
too.
State, like seriously, man, Texas State.
That was just them. I feel like that was just them pulling for anything they could get at that point.
They needed another football school.
And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. Because they brought what they brought in Gonzaga, right? And
Yeah,
then
they brought in Gonzaga, which is awesome. Uh,
mhm,
Unfortunate that we're not going to get the two Gonzaga St. Mary's games every year,
I
but
know.
I am so excited for the two Gonzaga San Diego State games every year.
I mean, we're gonna trade off with it, I guess. There's a pro and con there, but with everything that we've kind of discussed so far on this, I wanted to ask because again, you have a completely different angle to this. Why on the like for people on the outside, is it important for them or should they pay attention to student journalism?
I think that student journalism is the future of journalism because not only is it the people that will make up the future of journalism that are putting it together, but you look at how local news across the country is going away. So who is there? Who's still there locally? It's the students. It's the people that live in it's the students that make up the communities that are telling the stories now. And I think that the students are becoming the new local news, and they've always been local news. But when you see uh, stories that are obviously a big deal for a local community, or a story about a new business opening up, or maybe a story that is covering a controversy locally. You're not going to see as many of those from local papers anymore. You're going to have to see them from student papers, and the students are doing such an incredible job across the country. I think there's so many talented student journalists across the country. One of the things that I have kind of tried to do over the past couple of years is build a network of people around my age across the country that I can talk to. A lot of them I can bring on my podcast and talk basketball, but I can also talk journalism with them. I can talk about the future of journalism, and I can talk about the work that they do, and how they can help my work and how I can help their work from a lot of different places, from a lot of different parts of the country. I think that student journalism is where you get people that are passionate about journalism, and trying to make themselves better, trying to make their community better, and trying to do a service that we're seeing go away in a lot of places. I read I read a ton of student papers just because, first of all, they're really accessible. I think something that's like you don't need a login to read news cover to read local coverage of something going on across the country, versus if I like and there's no shade towards news outlets that have a paywall. Obviously, that's how these people feed their families, but like I can't read. I'm not going to pay for 100 different subscriptions to news outlets across the country because, frankly, I don't have the reason to read consistently news from so many different places. But student journalists are there. They're covering the scene. They're covering local. They're covering local government. They're covering local sports. Obviously within their university at a really high level these days. Some of them do a better job than others. I will say, and I think that's something you can attest to. There's a lot of schools that do a tremendous job. There are some schools that I wish did a better job, but the great thing is every school gives people the opportunity to get better. And I think that at Syracuse, even though like I'm not part of the student media ecosystem the way that I maybe thought I would be when I came in, um, I I still I'm in classes with some people that are super talented. I get to talk just talk ball and talk journalism with people who are super talented, and it makes me better because I think at Syracuse it's the most talented group of journalists in the country. But there's also really there's incredible talent everywhere in the country. You just have to be willing to look for it. And for student journalism, it's the future. As I said, um, this the people that will be making up the future of our industry and the medium that will be making up the future of our industry. I think we're going to see a lot more enthusiasm surrounding student journalism through the years because we're going to need to see it. I think that student journalists today, are realizing the importance that they're going to be playing going forward with local news going out. And I hope that that schools are able to recognize that. Indiana, I'm looking at you. I hope that schools are able to recognize the importance that student journalism plays. And I will say Indiana's done a phenomenal job investing into their media school. So I was very surprised to hear about to hear the way that that situation unfolded. And I hope that the talented journalists there keep keep going, keep working. And I hope that the talented journalists across the country keep working and see everything that's happening to journalism across the country, locally, nationally, as something that strives them to keep going forward instead of to hold back and say, hey, maybe this isn't lucrative. This isn't something that I can make a living doing. And even if they don't think it's something they can make a living doing, something that they can, as long as they find it fun and enjoyable and helpful, they can still assist in their local communities as a student. And obviously, I'm not covering local news the way that I'm talking about right now. I'm not really covering the same types of stuff that most student papers are covering. But I try and shine a light on basketball programs and basketball players and basketball coaches that maybe don't always get a ton of coverage. In the MAAC, we obviously are probably pretty well covered in the MAAC compared to some of the other mid-major leagues in the country because it's the Northeast and we have like the niche media ecosystem. Jaden Daly, who I would be remiss to not mention on this pod, has been a mentor for me, helping me grow as a journalist because he covered the MAAC. He covers the MAAC as well, and he's been doing it for a lot longer than I have. So he helped me grow covering the MAAC. But there's so many people across the country that I think can step in somewhere and be valuable to journalism, be valuable to the world, just giving their input into journalism, giving something that they can, giving a story, telling somebody's story, whether it's a player, whether it's just a person opening a business, a person on the street. Those stories are what make America America. It's what makes the world a special place. Um, and I think student journalism does a great job on the ground telling those stories.
Yeah, I mean another big thing with starting this pod was finding that talent, finding that connection. And I think that's a great point. there. I want to ask you right before we close this out, if you had a chance to go back and talk to 9-year-old Sam who's sitting at the lunch table doing his trivia show with everyone, what would you tell him about where you're at right now?
Keep working hard. Just try to expose yourself to as many situations as possible. Go do that thing. Go, don't be afraid of doing things. Like do what you love. Find what you love, but don't be afraid. Don't do thing. Don't not do things because you're afraid of what might happen. You're still so young, and you have so many chances to grow and get better. And take every opportunity as an opportunity to get better, and keep that passion, because at the end of the day, it's always been a passion for sports for me that has pushed me forward. Whether it's the Red Sox, the Patriots, college basketball, baseball, whatever it is, it's always been a passion for sports that has pushed me forward, and I love sports more than anything in the world. Like, I will never understand the people that don't like sports.
I won't either. I won't either. I know a few people and I just don't get it. I don't get it. But I love that there. So obviously we've talked about a few things you've done, but after people listen to this podcast, go ahead and plug a few things of your own, a chance for people to go find your work after they listen to this.
Yeah, so at Sam_Federman, Federman on Twitter. That is where most of my stuff, you'll see most of my stuff from. All my game coverage is on Twitter. I will post my articles when I write them on Twitter as well, from Mid-Major Madness, from News Magician, wherever it is that my content lives. I have a link tree where you can find that as well. So if you want to see my college basketball coverage, if you want to hear my thoughts on college basketball, or if you want to hear me glaze Drake May, you can find that on Twitter, at Sam_Federman, at brackets, at BBBCBB podcast, if you want to listen to the podcast when it goes live. Or if you just want to listen to it wherever you get your podcasts, just follow Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Steelers wherever you get your podcasts. We try and do a couple shows every week during the season, because we love talking about college basketball, and there's a lot going on. But yeah, thank you so much, Colin, for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I love talking ball. I love talking student journalism. I love talking journalism. And again, thank you so much. I've got to get to work because I've got a story that I want to work on that I had some fun with this week. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Student Beat. Sam is obviously the man. He's got some of my favorite, quite honestly, college basketball coverage, especially for sickos in the entire country. It's fantastic to look at his work, so I highly suggest you do. And if you want to stay up to date with all upcoming episodes of The Student Beat, make sure to follow me on Twitter at C_Carithers33, or you can follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The Student Beat. We just walked The Student Beat. I'll see you next week for a brand new episode.